We continue with our Theology of the Body Mondays, and we'll be talking a little bit about how sexual desire in itself is a good thing, and how, at least before the fall, it was meant to draw us to make a gift of ourselves to another. And then we talked about how, because of the fall, though, this is not necessarily the case. It's muddied the waters, and how often there's this temptation of wanting to use another person. Instead of wanting to give and love, there can be this temptation of wanting to take or to use, which is really what we call lust. Now, I want to talk today a little bit about the reality of shame. We've mentioned it a little bit when we talked about Adam and Eve being naked without shame, but I want to just expand a little bit on this concept of shame. So, the word shame, depending in which context it's used, it can mean different things. You know, whether it's used in theology or maybe psychology or whatever. And even within theology, it can be used in different ways. And so the way in which St. John Paul II uses this word, shame, in the context of theology of the body, it's in a positive way. So shame and kind of the content that John Paul II puts on, inside this word, in the context of theology of the body, John Paul II sees it as a good thing because it helps protect love. So let me just kind of try to unpack that. So we talked about how before the fall there was no shame, right? Adam and Eve were naked without shame. And the reason we talked about, we mentioned this, the reason why this was happening is because of the purity of their gaze, right? There was a very pure way in which they would behold the beauty of each other and be drawn to each other. After the fall, right, God goes looking for them and they're hiding, experiencing shame. Why are you hiding? Because we realized we were naked, right? There's a sense in which they want to cover their bodies. We talked about maybe what may have happened after the fall, on when Adam and Eve kind of gazed at each other. They saw in the gaze of the other a different kind of gaze that perhaps wanted to use. And so shame made them cover themselves. So if you think about it, shame is something that helps protect yourself from being used, right? Maybe somebody walks into your room while you're changing, or you're showering, whatever. Maybe a reaction is to cover yourself, right? Or if somebody's changing, whatever, maybe reaction is to look the other way. The sense of shame, wanting to protect yourself or this other individual for the possibility of being used. And we even see shame outside of sexual sphere and nakedness, right? Perhaps we've committed a sin or something we're ashamed of, right? And we don't want to share it insofar, or we have something really personal, a really personal thought. We don't want to share it because if we share it with anybody, it could be not received, and that could hurt. We cannot be loved if we share this really intimate thing. So we cover it. We have shame, right? And so, insofar as shame means this particular thing, it is a good thing because it protects the possibility, or it prevents, or it tries to prevent the possibility of either us using somebody or ourselves being used, right? And therefore, it opens the way to love. Now, I just wanted to say some comments here that shame, outside of kind of the theology of the body, and how John Paul II used it, can have a negative connotation. And even think of this example of Adam and Eve hiding from God. There's no need to hide from God ever. And so they want to hide from each other because they realize, maybe we're using each other, we're looking at each other differently. But sometimes when we talk about shame, we can experience an undue sense of shame before God. We don't want to share our heart with Him, and that really prevents love. So that is a negative way of talking about shame, right? Wanting to close ourselves from somebody who can love us like God, because we're overprotecting ourselves, kind of thing. This is not the way in which John Paul II uses the word shame, but I do want to mention it because it does relate to how we just in our everyday use this word, and there's not the greatest thing with that. It prevents love because we're not opening ourselves to be known, let's say by God or by somebody who could really love us. But in the way in which John Paul II uses this word, has to do more with the body, also with our heart and our emotion, and it's for the sake of protecting ourselves from being used, even maybe even used emotionally. So it's a good thing because it opens the way to love.